Welcome back, everybody, to the New York Knicks, MyNBA franchise here on NBA 2K23. Today we've got a jam-packed episode as we'll be recapping season number 2. We'll be going through the playoffs, and then we will enter the offseason, and we will cover the draft lottery along with our NBA draft preview. As you may notice, everybody has new logos and new colors. We have fully rebranded the league. I went over that in the last episode, and I went through all of the jerseys and whatnot, so if you want to take a look at that, I will leave a card at the top right of your screen for you to check out. So as we recap the season, unfortunately, Season 2 did not go our way. We ended up finishing with a record of 32-50, missing out on the play-in tournament. Last year, we went 500, so for us to regress this season certainly is not ideal. There were some good things that happened this year, but overall, the team as a whole really was not that good, and we're going to be making a lot of changes in the offseason. If nothing else, at least we had the 6th highest lottery odds for the number 1 pick to go along with our 2 other first-round picks. So as we recap the team, we will go in order of minutes per game, and that starts with RJ Barrett, who has been banged up over the past couple of seasons, but this year he had his best season of his career, averaging 20.5 points per game with 5 rebounds and a career high in assists on really good shooting splits. I think at this point in RJ Barrett's career, we know he's never going to be a superstar. I'm hoping to see him take the leap into all-stardom in the future. He's only 23 years old, so there's certainly time for him to do so. But he's been in the league 5 years, and at least over the past few years, really hasn't gotten all that much better. But I definitely do see him as a core piece of the team going forward. Jalen Brunson had another solid season, averaging a little under 16 points per game to go along with 6.4 assists, again on pretty good shooting splits. He's been a good player for us the past 2 years, not necessarily a great player, but I do anticipate him sticking around depending on how many changes we make to the backcourt. Omer Yurtseven played in 83 games this year. I would have thought that would have led the league, but John Wall, only 2 years off an Achilles tear, played 85 with the Clippers and the Hawks. So shout out to John Wall for playing in 85 games this year. But Omer Yurtseven was solid. We picked him up from Miami in the Julius Randle trade, and he was all right. He averaged around 10 and 9. Mitchell Robinson did not play in the final 35 games of the year because he, of course, wants out. He is heated with the current situation. He wants a trade, and we're going to try to grant that wish for him in the offseason. He was pretty similar to what he was last year. Good defense, good efficiency down low. Not much more, but he'll certainly have value. Cam Reddish played in all 82 games, starting in around half of them, with a career-high 13.5 points per game on really good shooting splits, including 40% from 3 and nearly 94% from the line. Cam Reddish is turning into one of our key players, one of our core leaders, and I think he's going to get better as a sharpshooter with time. He's going to be a great 3-and-D role-playing wing for us for a while. Now we get to the rookie, Cesar DiCarlo, who missed the first 29 games of the year with a torn Achilles, but you got to give him credit. He only missed 1 game after that, which might be a mistake on our part. Maybe we should have had him sit a little bit more because obviously his durability throughout games was not ideal, but he played very well this season, averaging 20, 10, and 9 per 36 minutes. And overall, he averaged a little under 13, along with 5.5 boards and 6 assists. Shot the ball horribly from 3, but his 81% free throw number suggests that he will improve as a shooter. And keep in mind, he's only 20 years old. Jae'Sean Tate, we acquired at the deadline from the Rockets. He got injured twice with us and played like 7 games as a Knick, so most of those numbers were with the Rockets. Emmanuel Quickley got hurt right at the end of the year. He was pretty solid, though, in 20 minutes per game, averaging around 11 points per contest to go along with 3 assists and decent shooting splits. I think we know what Emmanuel Quickley is. He's a good microwave scorer. Probably won't be anything more than that. But for his role, he's a really, really solid player. We did re-sign him to a 1-year extension back at the trade deadline. Patrick Feinstein had a solid rookie year, 8 points, under 5 rebounds, shot the ball pretty well. Splash Mayo missed the first half of the year, came back strong. He was a starter by the end of the year, averaging nearly 11 points a game. Ahmed Kabongo, the rookie out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, with 6.5 points and 5 boards. Very raw player, but we saw him play really well towards the end of the year. Wendell Moore regressed statistically. His minutes went down. Most of his numbers went down. I'm not too worried about him, but he wasn't great this year. Duncan Robinson didn't play with us. And then we have Jackson Watkins, whose numbers don't really fly off the page, but I really, really like his potential. I think he could be a star. And then Dom Cherry played a little bit. He was okay. Didn't shoot the ball all that well, but I think he's a solid player going forward if we choose to hold on to him. And then Trevor Keels, he did not play a game for us. I have gotten a few requests to go down the rookie report so everybody can see their custom players' stats. Keep in mind, not every rookie has a role on their current team. If your player did not play a whole lot as a rookie, don't worry, because these guys are young, they're getting better, and they're all going to have bigger roles on their teams going forward. For those who don't know, most of the custom prospects are made by my subscribers, so if you would like to make a custom player for the next draft in Season 3, make sure to go join my Discord server. The link for that is in the description. Along with all of these guys, most of the prospects we'll be talking about in today's episode a little later on are all made by subscribers. Let's now talk about the NBA playoffs, which of course we will not be partaking in. Instead, we will be partaking in the draft lottery. In terms of draft picks, we have the Lakers and Pacers picks, so I guess it would be better if those two teams did not do overly well in the playoffs. And then there are two other teams we're rooting against, the Thunder and the Pelicans. And for those who have been following along this season, you probably know why. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Zion Williamson. We want these two teams to lose just so we can plant the seed in Shai and Zion's heads that maybe these two places are not where you want to spend your careers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's Thunder are in the play-in against the Lakers. They don't really have much expectations, but it would still benefit us if they lost. The Pelicans are a little bit different, not just because they're the number one seed in the conference, but Zion is currently coming back from a torn MCL, and he's going to miss the first probably month or so of the playoffs. Now, the Pelicans are still a really solid team without him, with Ayton, Ingram, and McCollum, but if the Pelicans were to lose in the first round to a play-in team, that could really plant the notion in Zion's head that maybe this team isn't all that good. Maybe that I, as in Zion, has been carrying them all year. Maybe I'd rather go to a team like New York, where most of my good friends are, and where I've always wanted to play in my career. So as we simulate through the play-in tournament, the Thunder and the Lakers are both out, which is good. The Lakers losing benefits one of our draft picks, so this means no matter what, we will have 2 lottery picks, which is pretty exciting. And then the Thunder losing helps us, plant the seed in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's head that, hey, your team isn't all that good. Maybe you want to come over here to a bigger market. Now, I will say, Shai's teammates didn't necessarily let him down. Chet Holmgren played well in both games. Valentino, Giddey, Knotts. They're a good young core. And obviously, the Thunder are going to be really good with all of their draft picks. They have a bunch this year. But we have connections with Shai here in New York. I think he's a big market personality and would rather play for, the biggest market in the league rather than the smallest. And not to mention, other than his first season in Oklahoma City, which was the bubble year, they have not made it into the playoffs. This is the farthest they have made it since his first year in OKC. He's currently satisfied. He doesn't dislike playing for Oklahoma City, but maybe we try to convince him to come here. And then in the Eastern Conference, the Raptors got the 7th seed, and then the Pistons upset Philadelphia and Milwaukee to get the 8th seed. Let's simulate through the first round. We're rooting against Indiana and New Orleans. And, well, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that Indiana lost. They got swept. The bad news is New Orleans still won without Zion Williamson. They beat the Denver Nuggets in 6 games. The Nuggets are a tough opponent, and it was a pretty close series early on, but the Pelicans won the final 3 games. All the games were pretty close, but this does not help our pursuit of getting Zion. Brandon Ingram, DeAndre Ayton, and CJ McCollum all played very well. And then Dyson Daniels also really stepped up off the bench for New Orleans as well. Zion is still projected to miss a week or 2. He may return here in the second round against the Grizzlies. As for the other series in the West, the 2-seeded Mavericks with the MVP Luka Doncic are out. They lose to the 7th-seeded Timberwolves, and then in the East, all the higher seeds sweep. So going into the Western Conference Finals, again, chalk in the East with the Cavs and Celtics winning. In the West, the Pelicans get the better of the Grizzlies in 7 games. Zion Williamson did return for the last 2 games. Game 6, the Grizzlies won, and then obviously Game 7, New Orleans won. So the Pelicans making it to the Western Conference Finals pretty much without Zion Williamson. This shows Zion that the team is actually legitimately good, and this does not help our chances of getting him. Also, how about Minnesota? The Timberwolves is the 7th seed, sweep Dallas. So we've got New Orleans against Minnesota in the West. Shout out to the Timberwolves for this little Cinderella run. And then the defending champion Cavs and Celtics in the East. The Pelicans win the West with McCollum winning the conference finals MVP. And the Celtics take the East with Tatum. winning the conference finals MVP. Boston 1-7, New Orleans 1-6. So it seems like now that the Pelicans are in the finals, the Zion Williamson to New York train has kind of taken a halt. We'll see if they can beat the Jason Tatum-led Celtics. But I think no matter what happens here in the finals, Zion Williamson is not going anywhere anytime in the super near future, although Brandon Ingram is out with a severe ankle sprain, so he will not play for the Pelicans in the finals as Boston takes Game 1. The Pelicans win Game 2. Boston takes Game 3 and Game 4. So the Celtics now have a 3-1 series lead. We've seen 3-1 leads get blown before in the finals. Game 5 looking very close, but the Pelicans are going to pull away late as they will now only be down 3-2. That brings us to Game 6 at the Garden. Will the Celtics win it all at home? It looks like they will. They're up big here in the fourth, and there you go. The Boston Celtics have won the 2024 NBA championship with Jason Tatum taking home the finals MVP. So the Celtics win championship number 18. They have passed the Lakers for the most championships in NBA history. Jason Tatum is now a champion along with all of these players on the Boston Celtics, which is ironic because in the first 2 seasons of this series, we have actually performed very well against the Celtics. So good for them, I guess, even though they're kind of a rival. That'll bring us to the offseason, starting with retirement, and at the very top of the list, New York Knicks legend Carmelo Anthony, who had a lot of great years here in New York. I'm happy that we brought him back towards the end of last season. I know he didn't play all that well, but I'm happy he technically retired as a Knick. Along with him, Andre Iguodala, Chris Paul, Trevor Ariza, Brooke and Robin Lopez, Nick Batum, Paul Millsap, former Knick Derrick Rose, former Knick Danilo Gallinari. A lot of former Knicks here down the list. As for staff retirement, Andy Greer, our assistant head coach, he retires, along with some other notable names, including Doug Christie and Igor Kokoskov. Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony both made the Hall of Fame, both very well deserved. Both of them with 0 career championships, as Paul gets his Clippers number retired and Melo gets his retired by the Nuggets, but not the Knicks. I don't agree with that. I think Melo's more of a Knick than a Nugget. I won't let anyone wear Melo's number 7, so I guess it'll be unofficially retired. Going into league meetings, we have 2 being approved. We're going to have 2 new expansion teams join the league. You guys will see them in just a moment. And then a player receiving a take foul in transition will always receive a free throw and retain possession with an additional free throw if they have a clear path. I think the NBA is planning on adding something like this in real life, and I think that's a good idea. When a player's going in transition, they have an easy bucket. Sometimes the defenders foul them because, well, it stops them from getting the bucket. So that way, that can't really happen. Let's now meet the 2 new expansion teams. In the Western Conference, we've got the Seattle Sonics, and this one certainly hits close to home with our Sonic series last year. And then in the Eastern Conference, the Baltimore Red Tails will be not only entering our conference, but entering our division. And then through other changes, the Thunder will be moving from the Northwest over to the Southwest. So there you go. The Sonics are back, along with the Baltimore Red Tails, as we enter the 2024 NBA Draft Lottery. Now, the 2 expansion teams coming in does not really help us. I know they're not on this screen, but both the Sonics and the Red Tails will have lottery picks, which potentially could knock our 2 selections, currently projected at 6 and 13 back. Now they're going to be projected at 8 and 15. So the Thunder pick at 16. Here we go at 15. We do not move up, so our Lakers pick stays at 15. The Pelicans will pick 14th via Milwaukee from the Drew Holiday trade. The 13th pick will go to the Philadelphia 76ers. The number 12 pick projected to go to the Miami Heat will go to the Miami Heat. So no movement so far here in the back end of the lottery. The 11th pick projected to the Suns will go to the Bulls. The Phoenix Suns have jumped into the top 4. It's been a catastrophic offseason so far for them losing Chris Paul, but now they get some luck. The Jazz will pick at 10, and now it's time for the moment of truth. This is our projected draft pick. This moment right here could change the trajectory of this organization in this series. The 9th pick will go to the Knicks. So we do not move up. We actually moved down. We were originally projected number 8. Now we are number 9. The Thunder will get pick 8. Pick 7 will go to the Oklahoma City Thunder again. So the Spurs move into the top 4. The 6th pick will go to the Seattle Sonics, and then the 5th pick will go to the Baltimore Red Tails. I don't know if they would have been allowed to move up. I think this is where they would have been stuck at. So they get 6 and 5, pushing all of us down. The 4th pick will go to the Suns. Their stroke of luck comes to an end. The 3rd pick goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder. The 2nd pick goes to the Houston Rockets. And that means the number 1 pick will go to the San Antonio Spurs. They've had the number 1 pick now 3 times in their organization's history. The first 2, David Robinson and Tim Duncan. Pretty good track record. A lot of traded picks, 4 within the top 8, 3 of which are owned by the Thunder via the Rockets, Clippers, and Washington. So now it's time to look at the staff, and we're going to start by firing head coach Tom Thibodeau. He will not be the only coach that we fire. We'll get to that in a second. There were a number of former NBA cast-off head coaches in here, like Jason Kidd, Mark D'Angelo. I didn't really want any of those guys. I want a new face, so we're going to offer Trey Roberts a 2-year contract, and we'll be firing Rick Brunson. The only reason why we hired him in the first place was to tamper for Jalen Brunson, and now that, well, Jalen Brunson's on the team, we don't really need his dad anymore. So there you go. We have a fully new roster. Trey Roberts is now officially the new head coach of the New York Knicks. We have a new head scout, Arthur Warren. We have some new medical people. We have the new CFO as well. So there you go. The staff looks a little bit different. That'll bring us to the NBA Draft Combine and thus our NBA Draft Preview. As it stands now, we currently have 5 picks in this year's draft, 3 of which are in the first round. Keep in mind, last year we entered the draft with 6 picks, and we ended up using all of them. So we had 6 rookies from last year. I don't think it's a good idea to have 5 more, put it that way, because that's a lot. We have picks 9, 15, and 22 in the first round, and then 41 and 42 back-to-back in the second round. So this is a very interesting class because last year we thought there was a consensus number 1 pick with Christopher Killebrew, who obviously did not end up going number 1 because the Rockets are morons. This year there's not really a consensus. It's down to 2 guys, Adeyemi Onuaku and Kayson Castillo. Personally, of those 2, if we were picking number 1, we would have selected Adeyemi Onuaku. And I can say that now because I know we're not going to get the number 1 pick. And personally, I think this is the route that the Spurs will go. Onuaku is a versatile forward who can play really almost every position on the floor. He is one of the most pro-ready top prospects in a long time. I don't think he has elite, like, MVP upside, but he's going to be a good player right away, and this is somebody who I think is going to be an all-star very soon and an all-NBA guy for a long time. Good scorer from all 3 levels, versatile defender, good playmaker, good athlete. There really is not a weakness to his game, and I think his intangibles as just a 19-year-old are really going to entice the San Antonio Spurs, and I think he will be a Spur when it's all said and done. Kayson Castillo from UCLA is kind of a polar opposite in the sense that he's a very flashy player, makes a lot of big highlight plays, but he's not as complete of a prospect as Adeyemi Onuaku. I do think Castillo is a higher ceiling just because of his overall offensive game. He's a phenomenal shot creator. He can score from every level of the floor, great at driving to the basket. He can shoot it from anywhere on the floor. He's a solid passer, although he does need to look for his teammates more. He's often a selfish ball-first player. And then defensively, he's pretty rough. So he's got to improve there. I do think he has the size and length to get better on defense. It's just a matter of actually wanting to get better. But offensively, this kid is gifted. And you do not find many scorers like him entering the NBA right away. I think he's going to be the number 2 pick when it's all said and done to the Rockets, pairing up with a pretty similar player in Jalen Green. We get to this next tier of guys, and that starts with Nikolai Shevchenko, who is currently playing in the Czech Republic. So going into the season, Shevchenko was the projected number 1 pick in the draft, but his season really started off poorly. He wasn't playing all that well, and his projection was moved to outside of the top 10. But as the season went along, he really started to play a lot better. He played his best basketball at the end of the season for Alba Berlin, and here he is. He's an inconsistent shooter, but he's a great passer, great defender. So I think he's a very unique prospect, and I do expect him to go in the top 5. Seth McRobert from LSU, his stock has really risen throughout the year. He was still a 5-star prospect going into the year, but sort of as a fringe lottery guy. Now he's being looked at in the top 5. Now, McRobert is not a good defensive player really at all, but offensively, very, very gifted. He can score from anywhere on the floor. This is a guy who is athletic, he's strong, he's versatile, good shooter, good passer. He's just got to improve defensively. I think his A- perimeter defense grade is pretty generous, but again, with his size and athleticism, I think he will get better on that side of the floor. J.J. Henderson from Memphis is another player whose stock has really risen throughout the year. And kind of like Seth McRobert, he wasn't necessarily a no-name at the beginning of the season, but also not really being looked at in the top 5. I think Henderson's a little bit more well-rounded than Seth McRobert. He's a better defender. Maybe not as good on offense. I don't think he's as good of a shot creator as Seth McRobert. I don't think he's as good of a passer as McRobert. But I think with his good defense, I think he'll be a little bit more pro-ready than a guy like Seth McRobert. If you look at Henderson's skills, he is a really good shooter off the catch, very good off-ball player. So I think because of that, the floor with him is going to be really, really high. And again, he should be a good player right off the bat. Southern California has become a hotspot for talented players, not just Casey Castillo, but also look at USC and their point guard, Monteo Moore Jr. USC was actually a better team this year than UCLA. They've got a couple prospects in this draft, including Moore, who's a really talented point guard. Now, he's not good at driving to the basket, but he is really good at the other areas of the floor in terms of scoring the basketball. He's a really good shooter. Just got to improve a little bit inside. Defensively, he's really, really solid. So it's really just about scoring inside with him, which isn't ideal because he doesn't really have a ton of off-ball flexibility. He's really more of a pure point guard, and he's not great at getting his own shot off the ball, more so creating his own shot with the ball in terms of not going inside. So he's a weird prospect, but still a very good one. Let's look at the national champion, Syracuse Orange, who have a great backcourt, led by Johnny Conchery Jr., the Final Four MVP. Conchery had a phenomenal season all year for Syracuse, and he was phenomenal in the Final Four and the national championship. 22 points and 7 assists in the Final Four game, and then in the championship, he had 26 points and 4 assists, really playing well. Now, he's an inefficient player on offense, but he is still a very crafty point guard. He's a great passer, and when he's hot, he's hot. I don't think his D three-point grade does him justice. I think he's a better shooter than that, even if his shooting splits aren't the greatest because his shot selection isn't all that good. Needs to improve defensively, but offensively, he's got all the makings of a really good player. His teammate and partner in crime, DJ Ramses, is also really good. Ramses has good on- and off-ball value. He can run the point, but has mainly been the 2 guard at Syracuse because of Johnny Conchery. So I think DJ Ramses really has a very moldable NBA skill set. 6'6", 200 pounds. He can guard the 1 through the 4. The problem is he's not very good at doing that. He's not all that great of a defender, but he is still pretty versatile on that side of the floor, and he's got good size and length, so there's no reason I think he can't improve there. Good scorer, really good shooter, really good playmaker, very good athleticism. I think he's got the build for a good player, although he does have a little bit of work, but I think his skill set is very translatable. Those 2 guys are not the only high-level players coming from the state of New York, as we've got Imani Juno II from St. John's. Juno's a great combo guard, on and off the ball. Did you see that backdoor cut? He knows how to make plays without the ball in his hands, but with the ball in his hands, he's really solid. Juno is also a very good defensive player as well. So even though he's currently projected to be the 8th pick, his all-around game and versatility tells me that he's probably not going to be the 8th pick, or at least he shouldn't be. He should go a lot earlier because he's good at just about everything. He can play the 1 and the 2. Good shooter off the catch. Good shooter creating his own shot. Good playmaker, good defender, good athlete. Really good across the board. I think he's going to go a lot higher than his number 8 overall projection because I think he's definitely better than the 8th best prospect in this draft. Babatunde Precocious from Texas Tech is a very talented wing. He's got good size, good length. He can guard a lot of different positions, and he's a pretty polished offensive player. This is a guy who can get to the basket. He can score in contact. He can shoot the ball. I think he's got a really, really good skill set for the NBA. At the beginning of the season, he was being looked at as a top 5 pick. His stock has gone down a little bit, but still probably going to go in the top 10 with his solid defense and playmaking. Is a little bit inconsistent offensively, but he's got good form, and I think he will improve as a shooter over time, which is why I think he will end up being a pretty good pro. Going down the board a little bit to some of the back of the lottery guys, a lot of guards in this range, and that starts with Coco Diablo from Villanova. Diablo is a very fun player. This is another guy who is more the combo guard. He can play the 1 and the 2. Really good shot creator. He knows how to get open. Even when he's not open, he knows how to score with a hand in his face. Very solid three-point shooter. Really, really good passer. And defensively, he's pretty solid as well. I think he's got the personality for a big market like New York. He played very well this past season at Villanova. So I think he's got a really good skill set and definitely could be a guy with some of these other players in this range who the Knicks consider with one of their top selections, whether it's 9 or if some of these guys fall to 15. Max Maddock, what a block from the New Zealand Breakers. This is a guy whose stock has really gone up throughout the season, and when we last talked about him, he was being looked at as a late first rounder. Now he's being looked at as a lottery pick, which I think more so accurately represents his skill set. Really good 3-and-D wing. This is somebody who can score the ball, very good defensive player, good athlete. I think he's going to be a lottery pick, although it didn't look like that way for most of the year, but I think he is certainly good enough. Rashad Myers from Texas is a player we have not talked about yet. His draft stock has really gone up after a big performance in the NCAA tournament, leading Texas to the Final Four, where they ultimately lost to the national champion Syracuse Orange. Myers is a very talented player. This is another wing who can shoot the ball and defend at a high level. He can cut to the basket. He's a solid but not great shooter. Solid playmaker, pretty versatile defender. You can have him down low and on the wing. 6'6", 210 pounds. He's got a good skill set. He is a little bit older at 21, but still very solid. Next up, we'll be looking at Dragon Zhang. This is him with the Chinese national team, although he has played ball here in America. Last season, he played for UCLA. Great defense, really solid passer. This is a very well-rounded, polished player. Very smooth offensively, very good three-point shooter, particularly off the catch and shoot. Very solid pick-and-roll guy, decent playmaker, really good defensive player inside. He's 6'11", 250 pounds. Although he's more of a power forward, you could really put him at the center position. And then going down the board a little bit, let's take a look at some of the fringe lottery guys, starting with Cengiz Yilmaz from Turkey. This is a guy who the Knicks certainly could consider with their second first-round pick. As I said, I don't really want the Knicks to add 5 new players this year. So with Yilmaz still having another contract overseas, he could be a very solid draft and stash option as a potential 3-and-D guy, although he does need to be more consistent from 3. Weston Lamontagne from Iowa is up next. He's a very, Iowa type of big man. He can do a little bit of everything. Has some shades of Luka Garza and Keegan Murray in his game. And no, I'm not just saying that because all those guys went to Iowa. Lamontagne is a big guard, essentially. He's like 6'8", 280 pounds or something, but he sees the floor well, and he moves really quickly for his size. 6'10". I rounded down. He's actually 6'10". A little bit inconsistent as a scorer, although he's really good from the mid-range. Great passer, versatile defender. He's such a weird player. He has a very weird skill set, but he makes it work, and I think he's going to be a fun player at the next level. Let's get to the Story twins next. That starts with Jalen Story, one of the 2 sons of former Seattle Sonics legend Kyril Story. Of the 2 Story twins, I think Jalen Story has the higher floor, but the lower ceiling. He's more of an off-ball player. He is a solid catch and shooter, good playmaker, good defender, very solid skill set that I think will keep him as an NBA role player for a while. Kyril Story Jr., or more commonly known as KJ Story, has more of a low floor, high ceiling, boom or bust type of player. This is somebody who's more of a point guard. He's good at creating his own shot, although very inefficient. Solid playmaker, but again, could improve there. And he doesn't have a ton of off-ball value, at least on offense. Defensively, he does because he's like 6'8". So I think he's got more potential than Jalen, but a little bit more ways to go. However, he does not have as low of a floor or as high of a ceiling as Ra Khalif Doumbou from the NBA G League Ignite. Doumbou is, to put it nicely, raw. He's not a very good player right now. I know his shooting grades look good, A mid-range, B+3. I think those are inaccurate. I think his shooting numbers are worse than those suggest. But he is a world-class athlete, and along with his steady improvement over the past couple of years, I think he could be a really, really good player, but he's got a long ways to go. Looking at more of the back end of the first round, keep in mind, we do have a late first-round pick. We'll start with Samuel Royal from Georgia Tech, a player who opened the season as a top 10 projected pick. His stock has fallen a little bit, but it still looks like he will be a first-rounder. Very solid, well-rounded player. He had a pretty good season at Georgia Tech, despite his stock dropping. So I think it's more so other guys have risen ahead of him and have been really good, other than him playing poorly. Solid scorer, needs to be more consistent from 3, but he's a versatile defender. 6'7", 225 pounds. He's got good size and length. I think he's going to be a good player. Percy Butler III out of Oklahoma State is up next. When we talked about him last time, I said a perfect way to describe his game is that he's got that dog in him. He plays with a chip on his shoulder, tough, gritty, physical player, versatile defensively, needs to improve offensively, but not a bad shooter. We already covered KJ's story. Let's move down the board a little bit, take a look at the mysterious French big man, Alfie Kohn. And we talked about why he was mysterious in the last prospect profile, because he's a really interesting player. 7'2". He's already got an NBA body. He's like 260 pounds. He's a thick, human being. Now, he's not a very nimble athlete, to put it nicely. He's pretty slow, kind of flat-footed, but he is a solid defender, mainly because of his size. His lack of quickness isn't ideal, but he's got a fun skill set. He's improving as a shooter, improving as a playmaker. If he can make up for his lack of athleticism and more so use that as an advantage with his size, he could be a really good player, and his stock is kind of all over the place amongst NBA teams. Hubert Rumford from Florida State, the egg-headed assassin, is up next. He's a very interesting player. He's really good defensively, very versatile. You can put him on the perimeter and down low. He's got the size and athleticism to handle both. Offensively, he's not great. He is not a good shooter, really at all. So you're not going to have a ton of value with him scoring the basketball. I think he could be a better, more athletic version of a guy like Matisse Thybulle right away with a little bit more defensive versatility. So I think he'll end up being a better player. Let's now look at some of the guys projected in the second round, starting with Osvaldo Ledo out of USC. Ledo opened the season as a projected top 10 pick, and although his stock has fallen quite a bit, I still think he is definitely a first-round talent. He has played off the ball at USC to Monteo Moore Jr., the point guard, who we talked about earlier. I think Ledo is going to be a really good role player at the next level. He was pretty inefficient this year. I think that's why his stock really fell down. But this is somebody who can really create his own shot despite playing off the ball. So because of that, I think teams are really going to like him. And I think he's going to be a better pro than college player. His shooting numbers are solid. Playmaking, not great, but not horrible. Defensively, some room to improve, but again, not horrible. Going down the board a little bit farther, the next player we're going to talk about is Kenny Cooks from Ireland. Although he has Spanish citizenship, here he is with the Spanish national team. Another guy who can really create his own shot pretty well. Offensively, he's a very aesthetically pleasing player to watch, not just as a scorer, but he has some highlight passes as well. One of the best passers in the entire draft. The three ball is inefficient, but he's good elsewhere in terms of scoring the ball. Good playmaker, pretty solid defensive player. I think he's going to be really good value at the top portion of the second round. Going down the board even further, a player I really like down here is Day Frost from Arizona, another one of the better passers in this class. His brother, Caden Frost, his twin brother, was drafted 7th overall last year by the Charlotte Hornets. Pretty good player for them. Now, Day Frost didn't necessarily get hit by the genetic lottery like his twin did. He's a little bit shorter, not quite as athletic, but he makes up for it in other ways. Again, as a passer in particularly, he's not an efficient scorer, but he is improving the jump shot. Defensively, pretty solid as well. So I think he's going to be an interesting glue guy off the bench, and if he can improve as a scorer, he could be really good. His teammate at Arizona, Javontavius Carter, is a very interesting big man. Look at that monster dunk. This guy is not afraid to catch a body. Now, he looks like he's about 35 years old with the receding hairline and the giant beard. He plays the game like he's 35 years old, but I don't mean that in a bad way because he's a smart player. 6'8", 290 pounds. He's built like a defensive end. Imagine having Myles Garrett on an NBA floor. He's Myles Garrett, but actually like, a good basketball player. Malik Murray from Purdue is another guy whose stock has gone down throughout the season. He opened the year as a projected top 10 pick, now looking more like a second rounder, but I think he could be really, really good value. This was another guy whose production wasn't phenomenal this year with Purdue, but he's a very talented player. The shooting was inconsistent this year, but we know he can do it. It's just a matter of efficiency. Pretty good playmaker, pretty good defender. So again, this is another guy, if he can improve his ability to score the basketball, particularly off the ball, I think he could be very solid. Now really trying to find some gems here in the 40s. It's a lot harder to find talent here. I'm intrigued by Japanese point guard Akihiko Kiyama. So, although he's technically from Japan, he lived most of his life in Korea, and he has citizenship for Korea. This is him with the under-19 North Korea basketball team. He's a really gifted offensive player. Very, very good passer. Solid shooter as well. And then defensively, he's not bad either. He's not great at any of those things, however, so obviously that isn't ideal. But I think for the second round, he could be a really, really solid player down the board. Going into the 50s, where it's even harder to find talent, I really like DeAnthony Baker from Cincinnati. Again, really, really good passer. That's the name of his game. Now, the rest of his game could improve, particularly on defense. He's not a very good defensive player. As a scorer, there are some flashes, although he could look to get better there. But inside the three-point line, he's really, really solid. So if he can improve, I think this could be a really, really good value pick down in the 50s. Going down the board, some other players I like: Nelson Evans, Brian Bailey Collins. There's Akihiko Kiyama. I know I already talked about him, but I accidentally created him twice. So I'm just going to rename the second version of him because the first one is a little bit better. And then as we go down the board even farther, one of the most unique prospects here is Fernando Delgado. He's a shooting guard, but he's 7'1". So let me explain with Delgado. He's Brazilian, and he last played for the University of Texas. He's 7'1", and he can shoot. So obviously, NBA teams are pretty excited about that. So why exactly is he projected at the back end of the second round? Well, the rest of his game could use a lot of work, per se. He's kind of a tweener because, he's not a great perimeter defender, but he's also not great down low. So he's kind of weird in that aspect, although he is improving on the perimeter. Obviously, his size and length comes to his advantage. Solid athleticism. He's just got a long way to go with some of the little things, but if he gets better, he could be really intriguing. Here are some of the undrafted guys. I like Mark Sealy, J.D. Burton, Abram Mabaye, and then going down the board even farther, Nugget Robertson, Monte Carter III, amongst others. All right, there you go. So that is our draft preview. Let's go over the combine and pre-draft workouts and whatnot before we wrap things up. Here's a look at the combine. We'll go down everybody. So if your custom player is in here and you want to see how they did, here they are. A lot of top prospects don't participate in the combine, but I did notice some top prospects here. J.J. Henderson, Johnny Conchery Jr., amongst others. Those guys did participate in the combine, and a good opportunity for players whose stocks have dropped this year, like Malik Murray and Osvaldo Ledo, to really show what they can do and try to prove to scouts that they do belong in the first round. A guy who really performed well was DJ Ramses from Syracuse. He was the number 2 option there behind Johnny Conchery Jr. Ramses, athletically, we know he's a freak, but he showed it off at the combine, and, his stock certainly could be on the rise, maybe a top 5 pick now. So here are some of the leaders in terms of the shooting competitions. Imani Juno from St. John's really doing well in that aspect. And then for the pre-draft workouts, we have 10 invites. I want to do this strategically. I want to look at players who have a realistic chance to fall to the 9th pick. Assuming we don't trade up, which, we had the ammo to do it if we really wanted to. But if we don't, these are some guys who I think could fall to 9 who we would consider. We're starting with Johnny Conchery Jr., Imani Juno, Babatunde Precocious, DJ Ramses, and Coco Diablo. If we stay at pick 9, I would assume one of those 5 players will be on the board for us to take. And if not, then that means somebody slipped, and that's probably who we're going to take. Here are the other players down the board who we also invited as well, trying to figure out who we might want with some of our later picks. Those guys were Dumbo, Butler, Cone, Ledo, and Murray. DJ Ramses, again, was the star of the show with a sprint time sub-3. He is a freak athlete for his size. Malik Murray with a 44-inch vertical jump. Nobody did well on the bench press. I thought Percy Butler would, to be honest, but he only got 15. In terms of the shooting drills, Osvaldo Ledo and Coco Diablo, unsurprisingly, at the top, along with DJ Ramses as well. So, there you go. That's what the draft preview looks like. Again, we have 5 picks, 9, 15, 22, and then 2 in the second round. This is what the mock drafts look like. Draft Express has the Spurs getting Casten Castillo number 1, and they have us getting Seth McRobert out of LSU at 9. We did not have him for a pre-draft workout because I don't think he'll fall that far. At 15, we're picking Woody Boxamer, and then at 22, Julius Jeter. Solid picks, although I think it's a little bit early for both of those guys. And then in the second round, Percy Butler and Akihiko Kiyama. Good picks. 2K has the Spurs going with Onuaku number 1, which again is what I think is going to happen. At pick 9, they have us going with, again, Seth McRobert. Maybe we should have invited him for a pre-draft workout. Maybe he will fall. They have us getting the German center at 15, and then at 22, KJ Story. That'd be a really interesting pick late in the first round. And then in round 2, Kiyama again, along with Abram Mabaye, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. NBA.com has the Spurs going with Case and Castillo number 1. It seems like Castillo and Nuwaku will be the top 2 in some order. And then at 9, instead, this time they have us going with Coco Diablo from Villanova. I think that's a little bit more realistic. At 15, they have us getting Jalen Story. And at 22, they have us going with Kenny Cooks from Ireland. I don't know if we're going to use 3 guards in the first round, but all those will be good value picks. And then in the second round, Ja'Kai Jackson Jr., along with Aleem Strawn. So that'll wrap up the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Next episode, we're going to be covering 2 drafts. Not just the NBA draft, but we're briefly going to dive into the expansion draft as well, where we're probably going to end up losing a player, which isn't ideal. But yeah, that's what's probably going to happen. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Next episode will be the expansion and NBA drafts. I'm planning for that episode to be out on Sunday. No guarantees, but I'm going to try, and of course it will be a premiere as all of my drafts are. So yeah, make sure to like and subscribe. Peace out.